Spencer Ahrens, a 6'9" big man who can space the floor and who is a late riser in the 2025 class, just listed Gonzaga in his top 6. Could Mark Few be looking at his Ben Gregg replacement?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, place your first $5 bet, and you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Well, Gonzaga hosts NAIA program Warner Pacific tonight. We're going to discuss that. We're going to talk about what we want to see in that contest. We're also going to close the show talking about some updates with Gonzaga players in the G League, 5 of them on training camp rosters, including a few who have yet to play at that level. We'll talk about all of that. But first, we lead today's show talking about a 2025 prospect that the Zags have been listed in his top 6. Spencer Ahrens is a 6'9" forward from Bella Vista Prep in Scottsdale, Arizona. He is initially from Wichita, but he's been playing his high school basketball in the state of Arizona. He listed a top 6. This came out on Tuesday afternoon, reported by 24/7 High School Hoops on Twitter. Top 6 here, Gonzaga, of course, alongside Illinois, Washington, Boise State, Stanford, and San Francisco. When Ahrens was first kind of popping out onto the scene, a lot of the schools that showed interest, a lot of the offers that he has are from schools in the Midwest, closer to where he's from, again, that Wichita area. And there, I saw an article written by Adam Zagoria at Zags blog that indicated that, it seems like he might start looking at some programs out west. And in fact, of his 6 schools in his top list, 5 of them are out west, the other one, of course, being Illinois. The recruiting services are a bit split on Ahrens right now. This is pretty common with players who are kind of late risers. It sort of just depends on when those sites have updated their rankings, and some sites just maybe they update regularly, but they're a little bit slower to make moves on players who kind of are seemingly picking up momentum towards the end of their high school career. He was number 121 in the 247 Sports composite rankings in the 2025 class. Unranked by 247 Sports. They didn't even have him on their rankings, but On3 has him 76th in the 2025 class. Rivals has him 108th. ESPN, which only does a top 100, does not have him ranked, in 247, which I believe goes out to 150. They did not have him ranked as well. With the scouting report on Spencer Ahrens, 6'9", really good three-point shooter, also productive at scoring around the rim, has improved physically and defensively. It's the reason we made that Ben Gregg comp. We'll talk more about that in a second. He played really well at Peach Jam, the Nike EYBL event this summer. He had 18 points and 6 rebounds against the Oakland Soldiers, which is the team that housed the number 1 recruit in the country, AJ Dibansa. All told, in 6 games at the event, he averaged 13 points, 5.5 boards, and 1.5 assists. Now, the sites right now, On3 and 247, they both list what offers a player has, and neither of them list Gonzaga as having made a formal offer to Ahrens. And that is significant. It does not mean that Gonzaga has not offered him a scholarship spot. It could just be that that offer has been made and has not been made public. Typically, I would expect a player like this to announce that there is a offer from Gonzaga. It could be a conditional offer and he hasn't announced it yet. It could be that it just happened and that the sites just haven't updated yet. There's a lot of things that it could be. But I want to highlight the extreme similarities that this situation has, kind of how it has developed, to the similarities to how Ben Gregg was recruited by Gonzaga back in 2020. Gonzaga was heavily pursuing Paolo Banchero out of the high school ranks at O'Day High School in Seattle, Washington. Gonzaga was all in on Banchero. They wanted him. He was their main target, alongside some guy named Chet Holmgren, who at that time I believe had already committed, or at least was felt very likely that he was going to end up in Spokane. Regardless, Banchero ultimately chooses to go to Duke Instead of coming to Gonzaga, shortly after that, Gonzaga pivots. They make Ben Gregg their primary target in the front court for that recruiting class. Ben Gregg, very quickly after Banchero commits to Duke, we find out that Ben Gregg has revealed his top list. Gonzaga is on the top list. He sets a commitment date. He commits to Gonzaga. The rest is history. Not that long ago, Gonzaga, after 2 years of pursuing Nik Khamenia in the transfer portal, a 6'9" big man who can space the floor, find out that Nik Khamenia is not coming to Gonzaga despite all of the pursuit and is instead going to Duke. Very shortly after that, we find out that Spencer Ahrens has listed Gonzaga in his top 6, a player who is similar stylistically as a 6'9" floor spacing big man. The trajectory, the storyline up to this point is eerily similar to the storyline of how Gonzaga ended up with Ben Gregg. And notably, Ben Gregg in his final year of eligibility will not be on this roster next season. Neither will Michael Ajayi. We don't know about Graham Ike. For those of you who listened to Tuesday's episode, we talked about Graham Ike's upcoming season and the fact that he does have an extra year of eligibility should he want to use it, but we don't know if he is going to. Regardless, it is hard to not look at how Gonzaga pivoted from Banchero to Gregg and how there are some similarities in the timelines to Gonzaga potentially pivoting off Nik Khamenia because he has committed to Duke, just like Banchero did, and instead going after another player in that similar archetype in Spencer Ahrens. Ben Gregg was a late riser in his class. He was playing at Clackamas High School in Oregon. He didn't have as much pedigree around him. I don't remember all of the schools that were on Ben's top list, but it was not a bunch of high-profile, high-major programs. That is the case here with Ahrens as well. Obviously, Illinois stands out. Washington is in the Big Ten with Illinois, although they're not a particularly great basketball school. And then you have Boise State, who is good at basketball, but is not a premier brand necessarily. Stanford, obviously also a power conference team, but again, not a powerhouse. And then San Francisco. So a good list of schools, not trying to take away from any of those programs, particularly not Illinois, who was a 3 seed last year and is fantastic. But I could understand where if Gonzaga said, okay, Khamenia is out, we're still looking for somebody to fill that spot. We still want a floor spacing 6'9", 6'10" big to kind of come in and fill that role. This is the kind of guy you'd go after. A late riser who he's not committed yet, who you think you could still potentially throw an offer at and convince him to change any plans he may have had and still end up coming to Gonzaga. Most predict he's going to go to Illinois. That's the favorite right now, the front runner, according to On3. Of course, On3 also lists Michigan as his second most likely destination, and he did not list them in his top 6. So, like I've said about those rankings before, if it's right before a player commits, I take those projections fairly seriously. Otherwise, they listed Nik Khamenia at 79% chance to go to Gonzaga. So that tells you what you need to know about those rankings at this point. Gonzaga, of course, only one player committed so far in the 2025 class. That is Davis Fogel, who is from the Anacortes area on the west side of the state, playing at Compass Prep in Arizona currently. Gonzaga missed out on Khamenia, as we've talked about. They missed out on Isaiah Harwell, who went to Houston. Seems like they're going to probably miss out on Kingston Flemings, who did not come on his visit that was scheduled to Spokane for Craziness in the Kennel. But Ahrens is the exact type of player Gonzaga pivots to. There was a lot of disappointment in Gonzaga's one-player recruiting class a few years ago, and it was Braden Huff. Well, the jury's still out on what kind of impact Huff will make, but he was the 95th ranked player in that class, and he looked a lot better than that last season for the Zags. So we've seen Gonzaga do this in the past. Again, Ben Gregg wasn't a highly regarded prospect, and he has been a tremendous player for this program. So we also know that Gonzaga is not going to rely heavily on just high school recruiting, and even on next year's roster. Emmanuel Innocenti is a transfer they landed. We know that he's going to play a bigger role. Braden Smith, a transfer who's going to sit out this year, is going to play a bigger role. Ismaila Diagne and Jun Seok Yeo, both international players who could play bigger roles next year. Diagne almost certainly will as a front court player. We'll see what happens with Yeo, but Gonzaga is going to pivot. They're going to use different strategies. They're not necessarily going to be overly reliant on those high school players, but a lot of people had the question after we saw Khamenia go somewhere else. It's like, is Gonzaga going to target anybody else in the 2025 class? We have an answer now. Yes, They have a target. They are reportedly interested in Spencer Ahrens here. It sounds like he's interested as well. And this would be a Ben Gregg-esque move for Mark Few and the staff if they were able to land Ahrens here in the 2025 class. Well, folks, tonight, Gonzaga plays Warner Pacific in the NAIA. We're going to talk about that game. They're probably not going to be super competitive against an opponent of that caliber, but there's still plenty we're going to be watching for in this game. We're going to discuss what those things may be coming up here in just a second. The first, folks, I want to tell you all about Game Time because we get to go to live events. Going to live events is the absolute best, whether it's concerts, whether it's comedy shows, whether it's theater, and of course, college sports are back. Football season, we're right in the thick of it. Basketball is just about here, just less than a week away. I am so looking forward to getting to go to a bunch of different games this year in Portland and Seattle, hopefully get out to Spokane for some games as well. And I love using Game Time. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of different tickets. And right now, you can get tickets for Gonzaga versus Kentucky, Climate Pledge Arena Battle in Seattle. They're still on sale. There's still 2 tickets available for $64 a pop. They have some super deals for some really, really good seats closer to the bowl that are very cheap on that on Game Time as well. So, folks, take the guesswork out of buying tickets by using Game Time. Download the Game Time app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, and you will get $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, folks, segment 2, Stoney Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and now it's time to get you ready for the Wednesday night exhibition matchup, the last exhibition game before the games start. Counting in the standings for Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Gonzaga will take on Warner Pacific, the Knights, Wednesday night, October 30th, 6 p.m. Pacific time. The game will be at the McCarthy Athletic Center. The game will be on KHQ for those of you who are local in the Spokane market. As far as I know, the game will also be on Root for those in the Portland, Seattle, Pacific Northwest area, and then it should be on ESPN Plus for those of you outside of that market. We'll try to get an update on social media. If you're a part of the Discord channel, we always try to make sure to help people find wherever they can to legally watch this game as the first game of the year. Still waiting to kind of see how all that shakes out. I know there's been some issues with Root, but I think that the plan is for those games to still be en route this season. One of 2 exhibition games for Gonzaga. Of course, the other one was the game against USC on Saturday. Talked about that on Monday's episode of the show. Because this is because Gonzaga is using both of their exhibition games, they are not able to play any actual games in the standings against non-D1 teams. We've seen it the last couple of years where they've played Eastern Oregon as a game that actually counts in the standings. They won't have any of those this year. This game will not count in the standings, but is an opportunity to get a bit of a refresher to kind of get everything right before the season starts. Gonzaga's starting the season against a really good team in Baylor. They don't usually do that. Typically, they play 1 or 2 kind of bye games before they get into the tough meat of their non-conference schedule. Because they're playing this Baylor team on night 1, I think it's nice to be able to get one of these kind of tune-up games under your belt. And this is the perfect opportunity. And it's a fun kind of There's a fun history with playing Warner Pacific. For those of you who do not know, Ben Gregg's father, Matt Gregg, is the director of athletics for Warner Pacific. It's part of the reason that they have played each other now. This will be the second time since Ben has been a student athlete at Gonzaga. They played back in 2022. Gonzaga won that one by 31 points. Drew Timme had 21 points on 9 of 11 shooting. Nolan Hickman had 11 off the bench. Ben Gregg obviously played in that one as well, so it'll be fun for him to get to play against his dad's program as the director of athletics there. So that's just kind of a fun extra storyline with this matchup here. What I want to do now, since we don't need to spend a lot of time learning too much about this Warner Pacific team, I do want to talk about some of the things I'll be looking for. It's not 5 keys to victory. It's more of like, what do we want to see in this matchup before Gonzaga starts the season for real on Monday against the Bears? Number 1, I think, is we want to see a bounce back from the front court. Gonzaga's front court did not play well against USC. And obviously, in particular, front court players in a matchup like this should dominate. There's a good chance that Warner Pacific doesn't have a bunch of 7-footers on the team here. So Gonzaga will have a height advantage, a size advantage, an athletic advantage, and should be able to make that work for them and take advantage and score plenty of points around the rim. But EK was 3 of 10 in that game against USC. Ben Gregg struggled and barely played in the second half. Braden Huff looked pretty lost on both ends of the floor. Competition levels a big dip down, but getting some confidence, getting some game action under your belt where you see the ball go through the net is going to do nothing but help this team be more prepared for that matchup against Baylor on Monday. Would also like to see plenty of, since we're talking front court, plenty of Ismaila Diagne in this game as well. A guy who's not going to be a big contributor this season, but getting a chance to play in this environment where he should be able to dominate will help boost his confidence and help the staff see a little bit about what he can really bring to this team in the future. Key number 2 is basically still in the front court. It's can we protect the rim? And again, Gonzaga could block 15 shots in this game, and it's not necessarily going to make me feel dramatically better about the team's overall rim protection because of the competition level. But if Gonzaga struggles defensively, if they're giving up shots at the rim and they're not contesting them in this contest, the alarm bells are going to start sounding a little bit more. I don't expect that to be the case, but this would be a game where you want to see who's going to step up, who's going to be that enforcer. Is it Braden Huff? He didn't look great defensively against USC, but can he be more of a rim protector in this game? Can Graham Ike step up? Again, you don't need to block shots to be a rim protector necessarily, but can they alter shots? Can they snag defensive rebounds? Can they help mitigate any mistakes the backcourt makes in terms of letting guards get towards the rim, slow that down and get the ball back and get back on offense. You want to see that. Again, I don't think there's going to be a lot to take from this game that makes us feel way better about Gonzaga defensively just because of the competition, but there are some things that could make us feel worse. And then, hopefully that's not the case that we get when we're talking about this game on Thursday's show. Key number 3, want to see some more of the competition for minutes between Dusty Stromer and Emmanuel Innocenti. And Stromer's got the advantage. He's a year in the system. He's more comfortable, familiar with what he's being asked to do. But these are two guys who are both defensive-focused wings who can space the floor a little bit. Again, Dusty was a better shooter last year, especially in the second half, than Innocenti. But I kind of want to just see these two guys keep battling it out. Again, Stromer is likely going to be the person who wins and plays more minutes this year than Innocenti. It would be a surprise if it was otherwise, but this is a game where we should see a lot of both of these players and the different strengths and weaknesses that they provide. Again, Innocenti is a bit better of a passer. Stromer's a better of a shooter. They're both very good defensive players, although they're different in terms of what they bring on that end. I'm just excited to see both these guys in action, and I think it'll be a fun part of this matchup. Number 4, what do we see from Jun Seok Yeo? Again, a game like this against an opponent like Warner Pacific, we should see a fair amount of the bench. We'll see the starters. We'll see them quite a bit. We'll see what they look like playing with each other. Again, Mark Few wants to see Caleb Battle playing with those starters, wants to see the same with Michael Ajayi, wants to see the same with Emmanuel Innocenti to an extent as well. But we're also going to see a lot of the backups. We're going to see a lot of Ismaila Diagne. We're going to see a lot of Innocenti and Dusty Stromer. And I think we're going to see a lot of Jun Seok Yeo, and a player who didn't really ever carve out a consistent role last year. He looked decent against USC. He only played like 4 minutes in that game, had a great fast break opportunity, stopped on both feet, got a guy in the air, got fouled, got to the free throw line. It was a really nice move for him, but a lot of what we've seen from Yeo that has been successful throughout his Gonzaga career has been in transition. We haven't seen him look particularly polished in the half court on either offense or defense. I don't expect him to be a big part of the rotation this year just because there's a lot of depth and talent in front of him, but it would be nice to see in this game, in the stretches that he does play, like, oh, we can see the growth. We can see that he's more comfortable with his role defensively. He knows where to be. He's not late on rotations. He doesn't have teammates grabbing him by the jersey and pulling him to be where he needs to be. And the same on offense. He doesn't look lost in the half court. He knows where to be. He knows where to rotate. He knows when to cut. He knows how to do those things. Seeing that in this game, even with the competition level, just seeing that he looks more comfortable in the half-court sets is going to be a really big positive thing that we can hopefully take from this game when it's all over on Wednesday. And then last but not least, let's see the walk-ons. Let's see the new walk-ons in particular. No disrespect to Joe Few, but I want to see the new guys. And that includes Joaquin Reyes-Moore, who was on the team last year but redshirted. He did not play. He has yet to play in an official Gonzaga basketball game. They call him Q. Love to see Q get an opportunity in this one, as well as the 3 new walk-ons, Graydon Lemke, Cade Orness. Lemke's a 6'11" big man from Las Vegas. Orness is from Kitsap High School in Poulsbo, Washington, a similar area to where Davis Fogel's from. Would really be fun to see those guys get some real minutes. And then Noah Holland, also the newcomer here. I single him out because he actually was teammates with one of the best players on Warner Pacific's roster, Colin Oestrick. They both played at Allen Hancock Junior College together. So be fun to see them on the floor at the same time as former teammates. Would be fun to see Holland, who's a legacy. Both his mother and father played at Gonzaga. His dad played basketball. His mom played volleyball. Would be fun to see him get a chance to get into this contest as well. Well, folks, closing out the show, talking about the G League. The training camp rosters were revealed this week, really mostly revealed on Tuesday, and multiple Zags in the league. We got 5 of them, one of them coming out from a very successful stint over in Japan. We're going to talk about that coming up in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still a Locked On Zags podcast. And we are still talking all things Gonzaga basketball. We are talking about the Zags in the NBA. We're talking about the Zags in the G League. Not quite in the NBA, but guys who are hoping to get into the NBA here. And we got 5 players who are on training camp rosters that were announced on Tuesday for the G League. Some of them we already expected. We knew we were going to see their names pop up, but a few of them were new. And I want to talk about the new ones in particular, starting with Jeremy Jones. Was so excited to see this on Tuesday morning, or on Monday morning, I believe is when this one came out. Jeremy Jones is on the training camp roster for the RGV Vipers, Rio Grande Valley Vipers in the G League. He is coming back home, back to the United States, has been playing professionally in Japan for the last 3 seasons with the Nagoya Fighting Eagles. He was with their second club in his first year and spent the last 2 years with their top club in Japan. Was really productive too. 2 seasons, played 60 games in each of those seasons. So 120 total games over 2 seasons with Nagoya, averaged 12.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 2.2 assists. He was teammates for a year with Jonathan Williams, another former Zag. They were teammates at Gonzaga. Now they were teammates together in Japan. Really cool opportunity. Jones, of course, at Gonzaga for 3 seasons from 2016 to 2018, transferred from Rice, where he was on the football and basketball team. Fantastic role player, kind of energy bench guy for the Zags, and getting to see him get a chance to play in the G League. Just a really cool opportunity for him. I'm happy to see Jeremy back in the States playing here in the G League. Next up, we got Drew Timme, obviously not a newcomer to the G League. He was there last year. Drew was with the Stockton Kings, the G League affiliate of the Sacramento Kings. Hoping to make his NBA debut. Injuries cost him the end of his first professional season with the Wisconsin Herd last year. He suffered that ankle injury and didn't play for the last month-ish of the G League season. Was healthy this summer, played well in the summer league, played well he split some time. He played with Toronto's affiliate, he played with Sacramento's affiliate. Ultimately ended up in Sacramento with the Kings, cut from the NBA roster, but will get a chance with this Stockton team. Would be incredibly cool to see him make his NBA debut, and I don't really care who it's with, but it would be fun if he got to play in Sacramento with Domantas Sabonis, 2 of the best Gonzaga bigs of all time. Would be fun to see them be teammates in the Western Conference with that Sacramento squad. Speaking of teammates, 2 of these Zags are playing on the same team. Malachi Smith and Admon Gilder are both in training camp with the Memphis Hustle, the affiliate of the Memphis Grizzlies. Malachi Smith, like Drew Timme, was in the G League last year with the Wisconsin Herd. He played a little bit with Rip City, the Portland affiliate in Portland. He also played with Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Bucks affiliate. And now after a trade that did in fact involve Drew Timme, Malachi Smith is now with the Memphis Hustle. Was obviously a big-time player for Gonzaga in his lone season in Spokane in the 22-23 season. And then you got Admon Gilder, who is a very well-traveled professional. Gilder has played professionally in Poland, Israel, Canada, France, and spent time last year with the G League Ignite, who no longer exist. He was on a team with Ron Holland and Matas Buzelis and a few others who ended up going very high in the most recent NBA draft. But the G League Ignite was an experiment that just never really worked. A lot of guys wanted to play on that team to boost their draft stock, but they weren't a very good team unit. There weren't a lot of fans that showed up to the games. They weren't getting the competition level. It just didn't work. Gilder was one of 3 Zags that played it for the G League Ignite last year alongside David Stockton. More on him in a second, and Jeremy Pargo. But like I said, Gilder's been all over the place. He was dominant in Israel, played well in Canada, played in France last year after the G League Ignite thing fell apart. But now he gets a chance to play in the G League for an actual NBA affiliated team in the Memphis Hustle. Hopefully we'll get him some opportunities to potentially get a look in the NBA. Similar player to Malachi Smith, undersized 2 guards, good shooters. Really like what we've got from Gilder in his 1 season. Again, like Malachi Smith, 1 season spent mostly on the bench. Gilder actually was a starter to begin his Gonzaga basketball career, but got replaced by Joel Ayayi in the starting lineup. But it'll be fun to see those 2 guys be teammates together playing for that Memphis club. And then last but not least, the most prolific G League career of the bunch, David Stockton with the Valley Suns, the G League affiliate of the Phoenix Suns. And again, Stockton's one of the most prolific G League players of all time. Some might argue that that's not necessarily a compliment, but it is a factual statement. He has played 8 years in the G League. He has career averages across 8 seasons of 16.5 points, 7 assists, and 3.4 rebounds. David Stockton has been one of the best players in the G League consistently throughout his career. In fact, he is 4th all-time in total assists in the G League. He is behind Curtis Stinson, Josh Maggette, and Will Conroy. Yes, the record books for G League players is probably not going to be filled with a bunch of recognizable names, because if you were a NBA player, NBA caliber player, you wouldn't be spending a lot of time in the G League, not enough to rack up total numbers. But still, for David Stockton, the son of the NBA's all-time assist leader, and John Stockton, to be 4th all-time in assists in the G League, it's a pretty cool accomplishment. It's pretty cool. I think it's cool. Maybe not everybody thinks it's cool, but I do. David, now with the Valley Suns, will get an opportunity to continue to build on those numbers, to continue to be one of the most prolific passers. And again, 16.5 points per game. It's not like he can't score the rock either. He's getting a little up there. I think he's 34, 35. So we'll see how much longer he ends up playing. But one of 5 Zags on training camp rosters. We'll see how many of these guys, it's possible some of them don't end up making these rosters, the final rosters here, but going to be fun to track. Love getting to talk about the G League guys. Obviously, we'll talk about the NBA guys as well. Fantastic starts to the season for Chet Holmgren. Domantas Sabonis, of course, continues to do what he does. Rui Hachimura just had a 20.10 rebound game. Jalen Suggs had 25 points and 7 assists in a recent contest. These guys are killing it, and we're going to have some more updates on how the NBA guys are doing. But for right now, with these rosters coming out, wanted to highlight some of the guys who aren't in the NBA, but who are still playing professional ball here in the States, and who maybe, who knows, will get a chance to play in the big leagues soon enough. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. We'll be back on Thursday getting all coverage of this game against Warner Pacific, what happened, who played well, who didn't play well, what it means for Gonzaga's season opener against Baylor on Monday. We'll get you that on Thursday. We got bold predictions coming your way on Friday, the final show before we are fully into the season. We'll give you a big preview of that Baylor game for Monday's episode as well. Again, thanks for listening, folks, and until next time, as always, go Zags.